I'm going to introduce my sponsor, David. Please come up. Thank you guys very much. Give it.
Wow, I would like to meet that guy he's talking about. I might. Well, I've got a pretty good sponsor. A lot of you know him, Mickey from Denver. He's been my sponsor for 30 years, and he's kind of a piker, but, he's hung in there with me for a long, long time. He gives me really great advice, too. Sometimes I follow it. But 30 years later, my reaction to his thoughts about what might be in my best interest, my initial reaction is, that's a bunch of BS, But I have learned over the years, don't say anything, unless it's going to be, thank you. Yes, I'll try that, Mickey. And that served me very well. So anyway, my name's David. I'm an alcoholic. I have a sobriety date. It's September 20th, 1984. I was 31 years. So that means in 3 weeks I'll have, if I don't drink and I don't die, I'll have 42 years of continuous sobriety. Yeah. But this is about today, so I have 41 years of continuous sobriety. And Camille and I were just talking about time is an illusion, and there's only the present moment. And I did not get that at all, but I was listening to a meditation, and it was the words of Einstein. He said exactly the same thing. Time does not exist. It's not out there in the universe. We invented it, so to explain the universe to ourselves. So there's some interesting people that are all saying the same thing, and I'm intrigued by that. I kind of, the books I read now, I'm reading AA history. Oh, by the way, I did drink a lot of alcohol. The last time I gave a talk in front of people was at Fellowship of the Spirit in Colorado, and I didn't even talk about drinking. I just took off, about what I was doing yesterday. And what I was doing yesterday was yelling and screaming at this customer service rep because he cheated me out of $364. I was losing my mind. And at one point I go, David, what's wrong with you? This guy's a customer service rep. He doesn't have anything to do with making their policy or anything. I said, look, man, I'm really sorry that I'm talking to you this way because I realize it's not your fault. And then I thought about that for a second, and I go, wait a minute, he's working for a bunch of thieves, and he's accepting that, so it kind of is his fault, And so I took it all back and started screaming and yelling again. Pretty slick move for somebody with 41 years of sobriety, So, Nick was talking about some of the conversations we've had, and I was kind of impressed with that. And I thought, yeah, take my advice, Nick. I'm not using it, And one of the things that I want to tell you is, look, man, I got here. I mean, everything's a fight. Everything was a fight to surrender, to actually surrender. My wife and I...
You're all over the place with this mic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're swaying.
Back a little bit. How's that?
Alcoholics is a take.
Sound good? Okay. My throat, they can't do anything about my throat, so... Good. Thank you, Jen. How's that? Oh, okay. Okay, so should I start over? Okay. I did drink.
Has a mind of its own, I think.
You want me to put that thing on?
No, it's
Oh, okay.
Gotta stay on it, David.
you can just stay like right up on it.
Yes, sorry. Let's see, where am I? I have no idea where I am, and it doesn't matter because time does not exist. That's what I'm trying to tell you, you know?
You're yelling at the customer service guy.
Well, you know, it really is about surrender. And I was talking with somebody, oh, hey, how about this? Dano, thank you for inviting me to come here. And thank you for the nice stuff in my room. Camille and Danny, thank you for letting me spend the night with one of my favorite persons is Tom Mule, who he and I go back 33 years to the very first Colorado Fellowship of the Spirit. And man, we made a connection in that first year, and we just became such great friends. And so how much fun to have Danny and Camille let us spend the night with them, and I got to see my friend Tom. And said, there's a bunch of you in this room. I just can't even begin to tell you that I thank you for your friendship and your love. You can't do this on your own. And it's a lot more fun being with you guys. You know, no human power can relieve our alcoholism. So I might have the best sponsor in the world, but he's a human power. And so we seek God. That's what this thing's all about. You know, Bill Wilson said, if you want to find God, you may have to search fearlessly. But he was there. He's as much a fact as we are. We found the great reality deep down within. So where do you look? Oh, he gave us a hint. We found the great reality deep down within. You know, where do you look? Well, I'm looking out here, right? I'm looking out here in customer service reps, working for this crazy ticket company. I'm looking out here because I want a new car. I'm looking out here because I want to get married or whatever I want to do. I've been married to the same woman. It'll be 37 years in December if we make it. We did not start off okay. I mean... We used to go to this big book study. There was a guy named Paul W., and Paul was sponsoring me and her. Paul had been sponsored by this guy named Don P., and so Paul really kind of knew what he was doing with the big book. And so Heidi had asked me, that's my wife's name, Heidi. Heidi had there's 13-year. Heidi was 21 years old when she got sober. And I met her when she was in the treatment center. And I didn't ask her. That wasn't the night I asked her out, just in case you were wondering. But about a year and a half later, she'd been keeping an eye on me, and she started stalking me. And she said, would you take me, so innocent, this gal, would you, what a conniver, would you take me to the big book workshop that Paul's doing? And I felt kind of protected because I'd watched her for a year and a half, and man, she had devoted herself to this program, and it was really impressive. And I used to think, God, this gal, she's so honest. I've never seen anybody as honest as her, and she loves God. And, you know, then when we've been married about a year, she's laying that honesty on me, and I'm like, I don't like you no more. You need to mind your own business, you know. I've got my program, and you got your program, and never the twain shall meet. And but anyway, me and my friend Brian are taking her with us, and I feel pretty protective because she's much younger than me, and she's working hard, and so we're all going over to the Big Book study, and Paul always did an amazing job with these things, and so one night, as Brian and I bring her home, at her door, she asked me, would you like to go out on a date? Now, I'm dating my dope dealer. I mean, I'm sober, but my girlfriend's my dope dealer. And I'm not using dope, but she had been, my former dope dealer was still my girlfriend. And so of course, I told Heidi, sure, yeah. And we went to a place called The Harvest and had a natural meal, and that was really great. And then we went and saw Harrison Ford in Frantic, and that was a good movie. I enjoyed that. And then we went to her home, and on our first date, we made our first daughter. I wasn't quite ready to be married, you know. And in fact, neither one of us were. My stepfather was an Episcopal priest. He's since passed on, as my mother has. And we got married in their apartment or their condo in Capitol Hill in Denver. And he vested up, you know. He had all his vestments on and stuff. But driving down, Heidi tried to jump out of the car, is kind of what it was. She decided she didn't want to get married. Well, she didn't mind married. She just didn't want to get married to me. And and I said, no, you got to get back in the car. Well, it didn't get a lot better. And over the next several years, you know. And we were trying, and both of us had made a commitment that what our sex ideal, we'd written inventory, you know, and it suggests you might have an ideal. And we have very similar ideas. And the idea was we would place God first, that we would place her, I would place her second and myself third. And she would do the same. She would put God first in our relationship, me second, and herself third. And I mean, it was a great idea, but lack of power is my dilemma, you know, and that's it. So, I mean, one thing to bear in mind is I tell you what my journey looks like, you know. I've been at this a long time, and I had these great sponsors, and they kept me in the Big Book. And it was sheer luck that I stayed with it, you know. It's no real credit to me. I mean, I trusted these guys, and I really wanted what they had, and so I really tried. And but it's just not enough. If I leave God out of the equation in any way, shape, or form, it's just me trying to do it. And the Big Book tells us over and over and over again that we could wish to be moral, we could wish to be philosophically comforted, we could wish these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Lack of power, that's my dilemma. I have to find a power by which I can live, and it must be a power greater than myself. Therefore, we're going to talk to you about God. You know, and they say that, and then they tell us self-reliance never solved the fear problem, or any other problem, like the insecurity problem, my low self-esteem problem, the fact that I default to when I feel threatened at the level of third column stuff in resentment inventory, if you write four column inventory, is all about were we threatened at the level of self-esteem, security, ambitions. What are ambitions? I want you to act different than you're acting. I want the weather to be different than it is. I want. You know, a couple of thousand years ago, Jesus said, quit doing that. And the Buddha said, that's the cause of all your suffering, is that you want stuff different than it is. And so, and then they say, you got to get rid of that selfishness. What is selfishness? Preference. I want this to look like this. Why? Because it's to my advantage, right? Really, really simple, right? And we go, well, what does it mean to be selfish? You know what? 41 years sober, about 2 months ago, I said, well, I wonder what the dictionary says selfish is. Now, I'm a big book mofo, you know, and I never looked up the definition of selfish. And neither did you guys, huh? And you know what it says? No idea. Thinking about yourself. Are you kidding me? That's all I do. I do that all the time. And Nick mentioned I've got long-time meditation practice, twice a day, 20 minutes each time. And then I had cancer. That's my throat's kind of raspy, and it's probably permanent because of chemotherapy, radiation, some surgery where they kind of split me from ear to ear. Pretty wild, but it all, you know, I'm free of cancer, and so that's all great news. But yeah, man. And I didn't do that either. A surgeon did it. And here was my attitude when he said, well, you know that thing's... I went in to see the oncologist, and she said, I need to, I think she said, I want to introduce you to a surgeon. An oncological surgeon. And I go, well, I don't want to meet any surgeons because they've only got one tool in their bag and they're going to operate on somebody, you know? And if I'm in the room, it's likely to be me. And I don't want surgery. And I go see this guy, and he says, he does a biopsy. He sticks a big needle in my neck, and these muscles are just rock hard. And he can't get a sample. And then he calls me a week later, and he goes, we think there's something there. And my oncological teams told me better do the other side either. And I go, no way. But I said, okay, when are we doing it, you know? And went in, and then he cut me open here, and oh God, it looked horrible. It looked like Frankenstein, but it settled down pretty quickly, and he was a talented surgeon. And I saw him 2 weeks ago, and he goes, you know, you don't have any cancer, and that's great. But the point of it is, I'm always thinking about me. How's this going to affect me? I want to get rid of cancer without any treatment. Lack of power's my dilemma. We had to find a power by which we can live. Self-reliance never solved the fear problem or any other. But we are on a different basis, the big book tells us. We are on the basis of trusting and relying on infinite God rather than finite self. If you're not trusting and relying, this is David, if you're not trusting and relying, I'm out there trying to fix, manage, and control the situation so it'll go the way I want. And I've begun to realize if I get, quote, my way, what my preference was, that I don't have cancer, that I don't have to have an operation, if I get my way, it usually ends up being worse. And it also convinces me that, see, it worked. It was kind of like my drinking. You know, I would every once in a while not get drunk when I had one drink. I would stop for some reason. And I would turn back to that for years and go, see, there was that time back there, 18 years old, I got caught, or 17 years old at St. Andrew's School in Tennessee, and one of the monks caught me, and see, I only drank one then. And the other thing I'd like to say is, so I've got this practice, sheer luck, how I learned to meditate. I mean, I've always been interested in spiritual growth, and now I'm 3, 4, 5 years sober, something like that, and I go to work for this guy. He says, if you stay here a year, I'll get you trained in meditation. And he'd been a long-time meditator. He had a practice going back 12 years at that time. This guy was so cool. He was so clear-headed. He could really think logically. There's just a bunch of stuff about him. And I had been a wrestler in high school and college, and so I kind of judge all men by, what their physical form looks like. This guy did not have the goods. But, man, he had some brain power, and he was very clear and precise, and he was intuitive, and he was wise, and I thought, wow, this guy's really cool, and I wanted to go to work for him, and it was a beautiful thing. I ended up buying the business from him, and it just really, and I didn't really do anything except show up and go to work. But anyway, he said, if you stay here, I'll get you trained. So he got me trained, sheer luck. Right place, right time. How do you take credit for that? And I go, hey, I've been here a year. I'd like to learn to meditate. So he had a couple of his buddies. These guys owned their own businesses. They had long-time meditation practices. They were worldly guys that spent, an hour a day meditating, and very calm, very cool guys. And so I wanted what they had. They weren't anywhere near AA. They were just some guys that learned how to meditate. They were actually TM guys, transcendental meditation guys. And so I learned to do that, and I fell in love with it. It was so easy. You just sit there in quiet, and if a thought comes up, no big deal. You just say your mantra. That's all there is to it. You don't pay attention to the thought. You don't engage. And in fact, one of the things we learn if you do deep meditation, if you sit quietly, is that these thoughts are not real either. They're kind of like time. They're not real either. They just come up, and if you don't pay attention, if you don't engage with them, they disappear. It's crazy. And when the first time you realize, yeah, that's a real thing, those thoughts aren't real. They'll just disappear. It'll blow your mind. And it's huge progress. People go, oh, I'll never meditate because the thoughts won't. Wow. The thoughts won't. We are then in much less danger of excitement. And I'm still waiting for that one. So when you begin to realize that these thoughts are coming up all the time, and people say, I could never meditate because the thoughts just overpower me. That's progress. Usually we're walking around enveloped in our own thoughts without any idea that it's going on. So when we begin to realize that, yeah, thoughts are there, we've made huge, huge progress. And then the next step is you let it go. And you go back to your mantra, or the awareness of your breath, or whatever you do, whatever your practice is. A lot of ways to skin that cat. I shouldn't say skin that cat. I have a cat that I really love, and he's getting old, and so it kind of makes me feel bad. So I don't want to see him get skinned. But anyway, it is. Okay, so here's one of the things I want to tell you, is that what I did is just how I got here tonight. I'm not trying to tell you what you ought to do. I'm not trying to tell you that you need to change anything or do anything. I know your to-do list is already huge. I'm not telling you need to add something to it. But I'm telling you how I got here and what that means to me at 41 years of sobriety. And so about 5 or 6 years ago, well, about 10 years ago, we started a meeting format in the Boulder, Colorado area. We call them 11th step meetings. And in these 11th step meetings, we start with a 20-minute quiet time. And they give a very basic instruction of how to do quiet meditation. They just say, focus on your breath or a word, and when you realize you're thinking, just come back to the word. That's all they say. And so we start off with 20 minutes, and then we discuss the topic of the meeting's always, what's your 11th step practice look like? That's why we call it an 11th step meeting, right? And like most AA meetings, nobody stays on the topic, even when it's so simple. It's the same thing every week, people. Why can't you talk about what the hell your practice is? And I mean, that's what I'd say if I was judging people or something. But there's a gal that attends that meeting. She's pretty much, she's a chronic slipper, and she called me the other day, and she said, every one of these meetings is online, and she goes to that meeting, and she said, everybody at that meeting hates me and they're judging me. And she said, but you've never judged me. Oh, hell yeah, I judged you when I saw your name come up on the phone. Are you kidding? You're one of the goofiest people I've ever met. But I said, well, I appreciate what you're saying. But let me tell you, everybody's judging everybody in these meetings, you know, as soon as you open your mouth. And then if you don't open your mouth, they're judging you for that. That guy never shares. And anyway, so I was actually going to tell you what happened at that meeting. So the meeting, there was a guy in there, and I'd always been look, you work the steps out of the big book. I mean, I had some masters that took me through this. They were the people that were there making this thing the thing that it is now. I mean, they were training Joe H. and Mark, and they were the ones laying it out, and a couple of these guys sponsored me and took me through the steps, and it was like, man, I was on fire. It's like, shut up. If you're not talking about the big book, it's, you know, blah, blah, blah. Because I'm under the delusion that whatever I'm doing is what everybody should be doing. And if they don't, it's just because, you know, they don't have the intelligence to figure out what I'm saying. I mean, it's sick. It's really sick thinking. And so anyway, this guy's in the meeting, and he reads a quote out of the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. And I remember thinking, why don't you go back to Maine, man? Because it's them East Coasters that think, you know, you work the steps out of the 12 and 12. So, but I like this guy, and here's the quote. It's from page 98 in the 12 and 12. It's on the 11th step, and it says, there is a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices, self-examination, meditation, and prayer, can bring much benefit and relief. But when they are logically interrelated, they form an unshakable foundation for life. Now and then we may be granted a glimpse of the ultimate reality. What? That's even bigger than we've been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, which we're still waiting for him to explain the big book of what the hell does that mean, you know? And here in the 12 and 12, he tells us, you want to be rocketed in the fourth dimension of existence? You want to get a glimpse of the ultimate reality, which is God's kingdom? And we will be assured a place in that kingdom if we try, however falteringly, to find and do the will of our Creator. Whoa, and that's another thing about 12 and 12 is Bill's always talking about trying, just try. Just set an intention and try to do this. And, you know, I certainly got the impression there ain't no trying here. You either, you know, it's Yoda time. It's like, there is no try, Luke. It's do or don't do, you know. Well, okay, apologies to Yoda, but Bill Wilson had a better idea. Try and see where it takes you. So anyway, I'm blown away by this incredible quote. The guy's name was Tim that did it, and I go, let me see that. Show me that. I think you made that up. And that was about 10 years ago. And we ended up getting so excited about it, we started a meeting on Monday nights in Boulder. We're online. A couple of people in here come and join us. And we read 10 steps to each other. When we come in, we're online and we meet in Boulder Alano Club in Boulder, Colorado. And we're in a small room in the back of the Alano Club. No real danger of going beyond that small room. Because we don't have to get in a fight for the big room because we ain't ever going to fill the big room. But we have people come in and they sit down and you can tell, man, they're ready to tell us what's going on. You know, I need to talk about something. And all of a sudden, the first part of the meeting is you read these 10 steps and everybody writes 10. We do say write them. And, you know, had plenty of people tell me, the big book doesn't say it's written. It just says continue to watch, and when it crops up, you do something about it. And I said, yeah, I know, but if we didn't write them down, we'd get stuck in column 2 about the story about what's going on instead of what's going on. And that really is kind of true. So we write them down and share them, and people will come in, and man, they'll hear 2 or 3 of those. They'll get up and walk right out of the room, you know. And I get it. I came to share. I got important stuff to tell you guys, you know. And I want to talk about what's going on and how much I know. And this is kind of embarrassing to have decades of sobriety. And what was my... Well, I'll tell you what made it the day after. I have a friend named Ted. He chaired our Fellowship of the Spirit Conference year number 3. So that was 30 years ago. And he decided to throw a party at his house. He's got a real nice house and great backyard. And he invited all long-timers. Get all these people. We've been traveling together for 30, 40 more years. Let's invite everybody over. And Heidi and I had forgotten that we'd been invited and had responded, yeah, we'll both be there. And we were walking through Boulder, Colorado is a real neat town. They've got an outdoor mall. And we were walking through the outdoor mall, and my wife says, do you do you think the alcoholic has a rebellious nature? And I said, well, you know, Bill says some stuff about it. Rebellion, dogs are every move at first or something like that. And then the one that I really like is sometimes he's talking about prayer and how sometimes we can't pray. And he says, sometimes we are seized by a rebellion so sickening, we refuse to pray. And she says, that's from the big book. That's not from the 12 and 12. And I go, well, by God, it is from the 12 and 12. We're walking down the road, and she goes, no, I'm pretty sure it's in the big book. And I go, no, I'm real damn sure it isn't in the big book. Now, we've been married 36 years, right? And that goes on, and then I'm not over it. Nobody makes any apology, any amend. Nobody says anything like, you know what, it ain't that big a deal. Because it is a big deal, you know? Then I look at my phone and I say, oh my God, Heidi, we're supposed to be over at Ted's for this party in 30 minutes. And that's about how long it's going to take to get there. So we get in the car, we head over to Ted's. I'm going a little fast, maybe, you know, allegedly. And she said, now my wife is, she scares me when she drives, and now she's sitting over there acting like she's scared. And I know she was acting because I'm a great driver, you know? And I was getting really pissed off that she was faking being scared. And I told her about it, you know? I'm getting really irritated with you acting like you're scared. She goes, I'm not acting, I'm scared. And we pull up to Ted's house. Heidi's got 38 years, coming up on 39 years of sobriety. And we're sitting out in front of Ted's house. There's about 60 or 70 people in the backyard, and it's like, we can't go walking into the long-timers meeting with this steam coming off our bodies, you know. We're both so... And my wife, she's absolutely amazing, and she looks at me and she goes, I don't know what got into me. This is just, you know, I'm sorry for how I acted. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm not sure how sincere that is, but it's a pretty, I know. You know, easy to love, hard to help, you know? But I finally, you know, said something like, yeah, I'm sorry too, so we can walk into the party, you know? Long time, this stuff don't go away, you know? It gets better. I think that's why the big book says, we claim spiritual progress. You know, I was 5 years sober. We got in an argument that led to me pushing her down on the ground, spitting on her. It was horrible. It was absolutely unacceptable behavior and terrible. And then I grabbed our 1.5-year-old daughter and jumped in the car, rode to Evergreen College. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where to go. My brother lives in Evergreen. I drove there, and as soon as I walked in the door, my sister-in-law, who I've known since I was like 12 years old, says, the Boulder police say you're to give me, Lauren, the baby, my 1.5-year-old that I've kidnapped, I guess, you know. And you're supposed to drive back to Boulder and go to the police station. And so that's what I did. But that was me with 5 years of sobriety. So arguing over whether it's the big book or the 12 and 12. I'm claiming spiritual progress here. And it's better than it was. And as Heidi says, David, if you could do better, you would do better. So what's, what we were like, what I was like. We share in a general way what we were like, what happened, and what we're like now. So number one, I didn't tell you anything about it's what I was like. I mean, if it's not right here, right now, it's what I was like, right? I did drink a lot of booze. I shot a lot of dope. People would offer me stuff. I found out very early on, if you take this stuff, you can get out of you, and if you don't like you, that's a good place to be. That's all it is. And I like drinking straight whiskey, and I like drinking schnapps because then they wouldn't smell it on your breath. What? You're walking around smelling like peppermint and they can't smell it on your breath. But anyway, and I liked shooting dope because it got you there really quick. And I would take anything that anybody gave me. I wouldn't even ask them what it did. And I liked living that way until I couldn't take it anymore. And then I spent 5 years trying to quit, and I couldn't do it. I would say, I'll quit. And then I'd start right back up again. I couldn't do it. And I'm working this good job in the oil and gas business, and I'm driving this nice car, a Volvo, and it all looked okay on the outside, except I was insane, and I was always looking for a way out. And at one point, my folks go, you need to go see, we had a family business, you need to go see a therapist and you need to go see a medical doctor. And I went to a therapist and I lied. I never told him anything about drugs or alcohol. And I was telling him, well, this gal I'm dating, she was the dope dealer gal. And I would say, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't act like this. And the medical doctor, I lied to him too. I went in there and he goes, listen, man, this was 1983. At that time, hepatitis had not been typed as C. They called it non-A, non-B. And he said, you have hepatitis. We call it non-A, non-B. I go, what does that mean? He goes, well, it means your liver's hardening and you're killing yourself. He said, how much do you drink? And I said, well, what I did was I thought, I probably drink on a good night a quart, so I'll knock that back to half of that. So I'd say, probably about a pint a day. He goes, oh my God, man, do you realize you're killing yourself? And I'm thinking, God, Doc, settle down, And I drove out of his office. Across the street was North Boulder Liquor. Because, man, when you get news like that, there ain't nothing like a few soda pops to straighten it out, So anyway, I drank. I had no idea there was a way out. I had no idea it required a spiritual solution. And a guy 12-stepped me, a guy named Ken, who I'd known since I was in grade school, and he'd gotten sober. I knew Ken, I trusted Ken, he was as bad as me. I mean that, like if it worked for him, it could work for me because he was worse than me, and now he's sitting there sober. And the rest of it has been, how do I get me out of the way to let God do the good work in me he's trying to do? And I have fallen in love or stayed in love with Alcoholics Anonymous because, there's a great line in the Bible. Jesus has just given a sermon that really pissed people off, and they all walked away. And he goes walking down the road, and he turns back and sees Peter, and he goes, Peter, will you leave me too? And Peter said, no, Lord, you have the words that are life. And so I'm going to stay with you, and that's how I feel about AA. Where would I go? You have the words that are life. So thanks for letting me share a few thoughts.